So, Penny and Linda showed your books.
We're adapting a novel.
Great Expectations.
To make a long story short, Bill Rausch and I talked a few years ago. I was telling him that I was working on my own. Linda was in Taiwan. Linda and I have actually done a few adaptations together for the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. And Linda was in Taiwan, and I had some time off in the summer, and I was fiddling around working on an adaptation of a little short story of Dickens, trying to see if I could make it work, get my fingers wet again. And I had lunch with Bill just by happenstance at that time, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I told him, and he said, "Well, we need to do Great Expectations together." And I was like, "Okay." And so, that just one thing led to the next, because Bill, kind of gets something in his mind, and he goes after it. And so about 6 months later, when this looked like it was going to be serious commission, I said, I'd like to do it with my friend Linda Alper. And Linda said yes. She came back from Taiwan, and Linda said yes, and so we began work.
I think for me, actually, there's almost nothing I'd rather see than a Dickens. It's just the world, the characters, the energy, and the kind of theatricality of these stories are irresistible to me. So to be working on this is really thrilling, because I would love to be watching it. It started, so when Bill first thought of it, it was for the outdoor stage, which has its own kind of bigness and operatic theatrical quality, which was great for this. It also presented some big challenges. Do you want to talk about how?
Well,
that
I mean,
changed?
obviously,
and in the way we adapted it.
Yes, there were some very, very, the whole novel is filled with mists and fog and all kinds of spooky kind of moments, ghosts and things you don't necessarily think of when you think of Great Expectations, but the novel is filled with that, with Pip's premonitions and things appearing, and he wonders where they're coming from, and then of course Saddest House, the Miss Havisham's house, which has its own peculiar mystery to it, So thinking about, the play opens in a scary churchyard with on a very foggy Christmas Eve, and it's a terrifying moment. Well, outside in broad daylight, that was a very difficult thing to think about. How could we make that happen?
And I even for a moment thought, all right, could we do the play out of order?
Yeah, right.
Could we somehow make a flashback and put that scene an hour later? No,
yeah.
You couldn't do that, but it was anything to.
And so, because we've both had experience out there, I immediately just started thinking, okay, how do you do this? Well, you theatricalize it in a way that you tell a story, because that's what you need to do. You need to hear things rather than see literal things on stage. And that's when we really decided that the story needs to have narration that is not just Pip narrating, but it is a narrator, the way Henry V chorus comes out and goes, let me take you someplace, let me show you what this is really like. We can't do it all here, but let me tell you what it's like. And so, because Dickens is such a great writer, it was easy to find things that could help us do that in terms of description, which made us understand we didn't really need to have a lot of set. That what we needed were these dynamic moments and these characters really etched out in space. And the narration would help put us in a place and a time and what the atmosphere was. When we moved inside, obviously, because outside, for instance, it would have been broad daylight when he went to Miss Havisham's, where it's all dark. So we had to talk about that. Well, when we moved inside, Colette Pollard, who is the set designer, very wisely said, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater when you go inside. Just because you have more ability to do lights and sound doesn't mean that something about this narration or the simplicity of moving, of letting the audience's imagination fill in the space. Because could you ever really see Miss Havisham's house?
Or any of these locations. I mean, it goes from the city of London to
the marshes.
The marshes. to Miss Havisham's house, you know, to a cottage in the country. I mean, you could never, if you tried to literally do it, it would make it less rather than more.
Right.
So
what we were interested in doing is pushing that story forward with as much dynamic quality as we could. So in a way, I think we learned a lot from thinking about it outside and then
yes, we did.
moving it inside. And you know, the other thing, the reason it moved, one of the reasons it moved inside is that when we did our first reading at the festival, many people in that room said, "Wow, what a shame our student audiences are not going to get to see this." And I think Bill really took that to heart and said, "Yeah, let's make that happen." And so that's why we're there for the year. She became
I think there are a lot of people who think they know this novel and don't really know it. I mean, we were talking before about that. Everybody reads it in, we think, ninth grade, or used to. I don't think they do anymore. And that they remember, you know, you remember maybe a little bit about Miss Havisham's house, and that there's an old cake, and I remember decayed sort of lace, and that she was a little crazy. But that's only one tiny
just
part of the
tiny
novel,
part.
and it's such a rich and moving story of this young man becoming a man. So we've known each other for
1986, is that right?
so almost 30 years.
Three Penny Opera.
Yeah, right. We first were actresses together, and then
And we just
Penny,
became really good
Yeah.
friends.
and Penny then started to become a director. The very beginning of your directing
Yes, that's right,
career.
very shortly after that.
And I was actually interested, even at that time, in writing adaptations. And my writings, then we did this adaptation of The Three Musketeers
Which OSF commissioned, and we did it.
with
and
Douglas Langworthy
Right.
also, and that was a very successful script and a very successful production.
And I think Douglas really helped us know this is how you take all of this and make it into the show. You know, we had big boards and
at that time, this is kind of we had
Oh,
an intern who helped us, and he would go to the
On
library
his
every
bicycle.
day on his bicycle at SOU and come back with stacks of books.
because it was pre-internet.
Well, there was some internet, but you couldn't get nearly the kind of
No.
research. We sound like we're 150 years old, but
We are
nearly,
100 years
really, the kind of research that you have today. So he would bring those back and then take them back to the library as we were looking for, because we used some historical material in that also, besides actually the book itself. So
So
then
that was our love of doing that. I mean, we just really enjoyed working on that.
yeah, and then we worked together as director and actress
Mm-hmm.
several times. And then I did also a couple of translations here with Libby.
And then we wanted to work together again with Doug, and we were sitting. I will never forget this. We were sitting in my living room, and I looked up, and Doug had pulled down this little Soroyan novella, and he said, "Oh, I didn't know this," and I said, "That's what we should adapt, and we should get Sterling Tinsley to write the music. We'll make it a musical." And it was all kind of like, "Okay, how do we do that?" and so we worked together on that and did Tracy's Tiger here, and which again, we take sort of really big, impossible ideas, and we try to theatricalize them, and then after that. Bill asked me to do Comedy of Errors, and he wanted a musical version. And I asked Linda to
did
come
some
in
lyrics
and
on
do
that.
some lyrics on that. And I think we are always looking for opportunities. So when this was presented to me, you know, it just was a no-brainer that I wanted to ask if Linda could work on
And
this
why we
with
work
us.
so well together, I have no idea. We just do.
We just do. We're kind of really frank with each other. We also laugh a lot. We eat a lot together, which is fun.
And he's a great cook.
and so we, you know, I just think we have a lot of fun together, and I think we complement each other's gifts. Right?
I do. Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
I do too.
Linda has a remarkable sense of structure, and and kind of a no-nonsense look at things. She also has a great sense of humor and a good sense for dialogue and that sort of thing. So that, that is something I really admire and I hold on to, and feel like anytime she says something, even if I disagree with it, I go, she's probably right. Let me just look at that again, So.
And Penny, of course, sees it in space and also has a really good sense of following the concept and the theme. And also, I always feel like you are the one that gets to the heart. That sometimes that's you bring it back there.
So I just think we, and the fact that we both had the same, it wasn't like, oh, we've got a job. It was like, oh my God, we get to work on this. And I think we felt that the whole way through this.
And
we get to work on this amazing book together. Linda lives in Portland now. So the idea that we sort of have to get together, is so terrific. And for that to be connected to material that is so rich and good. I mean, great. Three Musketeers is wonderful material. Soroyan is a fabulous writer. But this is adaptable beyond words.
Yeah.
Adaptable. Just so yummy to get.
And, of course, Dickens loved the theater. Dickens was an amateur actor. I mean, it's the reason he's so constantly adapted on film and television and on the stage, because it just is it's a natural transition. More than, I think, even though Three Musketeers is a very theatrical story, but there's nothing it's pre-psychological.
Right.
So, it's kind of all action. Even the book is that way, whereas this is everything.
It's everything, and the characters. This is the other thing about why OSF. Because first of all, OSF can embrace these kinds of projects in a fabulous way, which is really it's we have a very deep connection here, And the other thing is that you look at these characters in this, and even if we've, can only do a handful of them, these delicious Dickensian characters, even if it's just a splash of color, I know we have actors who can take that little splash of color and make something phenomenal out of it. And that's not always the case, you just get somebody who's utilitarian, but I think that's going to be...
and it belongs in this repertoire.
It does.
It belongs next to Shakespeare and other classic writers. It just will be. And the audiences here, I think, will love it.
Eat it up.
I think it's just going to be their cup of tea. Perfect.